How do you create a vampire character? My first tip is consider how they became a vampire in the first place. Were they born that way or were they turned into a vampire? There are many different ways a character may become a vampire in the world of your book, and it's important to consider these options. In some stories, you'll notice that a character can be born as a vampire, but in other stories, a character might have to get turned into a vampire, either through being bitten by a vampire or through some other means. My second tip is develop their current goals from their backstory. Keep in mind that most vampires in fiction will be very old. Most vampires will have very long lifespans, which will mean that their lifespan will come with a very interesting and complex backstory. Now, of course, the age of your vampires also depends on your story as well. You may decide that you want your vampire characters to have a similar lifespan as your human characters. If you decide to give your vampire characters longer than normal lifespans, keep in mind that your vampire characters will likely also have very well-developed backstories, and their backstories will likely affect the goals that they have today. Maybe they've seen or experienced a lot of difficult things in their past that really affects the way they experience things now. Maybe they are more hesitant to get closer to humans or other characters because of these reasons. My third tip is give them a personal philosophy. While there may be good and bad vampires in your story, keep in mind that not all vampires should be the same. I think it's really important that when you develop vampire characters, in order to keep them realistic and meaningful, every vampire character you create should have a personal philosophy. So there is nothing really as set in stone as a good or a bad vampire character, and it's important to think about what each character values personally and how that affects the way they live their life. For example, in your book, if it is possible for a vampire to live as a vegetarian vampire, think about how that really affects your vampire character's personal philosophies. Maybe they're the kind of vampire who doesn't believe in those philosophies and has their own beliefs and things that they follow as a vampire character. There might be some vampires in your story who think it is okay to bite humans, and other vampires in your story that thinks it is definitely not okay and want to be friends with the humans instead. My fourth tip is consider the vampire rules in your book. Vampires can really vary from story to story, and it's important to really establish your vampire rules in your book first before you go further into creating your vampire characters. So really look at the main vampire rules and think about if you're going to use those types of rules in your book or if you're going to change them up and create different rules in your book. So for example, can your vampires go near garlic or eat garlic? Can your vampires go out in the sunlight? Your vampire characters need to drink blood to survive. Really think about the common vampire rules that exist and think about if you might want to use those same rules or if you want to put your own spin on those rules to create something new. And finally, my fifth tip is determine vampire life stages. With an extended vampire's life, if you choose to extend your vampire character's life, there will be extended life stages, and it's important to think about what each important stage of your vampire character's life is. So there might be a time when they come of age as a vampire, when they essentially become an adult as a vampire. Maybe there's an age when they get certain powers as a vampire, and maybe there's a time when they finally develop their immortal abilities. So really think about the different life stages of your vampire characters and how that might affect them in the world of your story.